Morning. A very good morning to all of you. It's such an honor to be here to talk about something that's extremely close to my heart, especially in this day and age, given the fact that we are constantly inundated with messages from the food industry. I think there is no better time than now to talk about the power of our collective wisdom and to really own it. So I just want to take some time to talk about the lessons that I've personally learned from the indigenous communities across the Himalayan belt. The most important one being, how do these indigenous communities preserve the ecology? Maintaining ecosystem and its biodiversity. This is Sering Dolma here, right outside her home in this village called Tukla, which is towards the east of Ladakh. She's foraging for wild garlic chives, locally known as kotse. And then she's hand pounding them into these discs, which are sun dried for about 3 weeks in the summer and then preserved for autumn, winter, and spring during the really harsh weather when they don't have access to fresh produce and also the freshly foraged herbs. The most ancient way of maintaining ecosystem is through foraging, which is a practice as old as the land itself. And the practice of foraging is about picking things, picking ingredients from the wild, ingredients that are edible. And while this has become such a big phenomena globally, this is how our communities have been living since time. While in urban cities, foraging is often seen as a buzzword, in rural India is pretty much a way of life. What you see on the screen at the bottom, these are wild alpine strawberries being picked in Gulmarg. On the right, the purple colored clump of flowers that you see, that's Priyanku, a very rare herb that's foraged in Varila. It's used in Ladakhi cooking. And it also has its origin in the most ancient medicine system, which is actually the Tibetan medicine system. Right next to it, the basket that you see, this is called as wild Sichuan pepper, a really prized ingredient when it comes to Korean cooking, when it comes to Japanese cooking. But what a lot of us do not know is that it is intrinsic to the Dogri communities that live in Rajouri and Punch, which are the outer district of Jammu. This ingredient is so old that it's documented as a folklore, and the song is called Chutney Timrudi. What is fascinating about Indian cooking is that, we have a lot of micro cuisines and our food is so diverse, and our cuisine actually changes every 60 kilometers. And the most interesting part is that none of our culinary traditions have ever been documented. They've been orally passed from one generation to the other. And right outside Sering Dolma's house in that pristine village that you saw, there are at least 50 varieties of wild flowers, herbs, and berries. And her in-depth knowledge of everything that this indigenous territory is home to, both in terms of wild edibles and wild species, comes from her ancestors. And therefore, it's very important to understand that these communities are really key to understanding wild foods, their culinary usage, and also for making sure that this can be replenished for future generations. Every time I've gone foraging with these communities, the first thing that they tell me is that please make sure you take what you need and make sure that you leave enough. And that is the concept of sustainability, which is really a everyday practice for these communities. Preserving our ancient culinary wisdom. What you see on the screen is actually a watermill, and locally this is known as ranthak. This one in particular is in this village called Likse, which is again towards the east of Ladakh, at least 300 years old. Each village has their own ranthak, and this is traditionally used to stone grind their staple grains. And before the public distribution system was introduced in black buckwheat, the most ancient pseudo grain from Ladakh, was the primary staple, and it's only after the public distribution system being introduced that it made way for cheaper grains. There's just so much of talk that we see all over now about reducing waste, about reusing, recycling. Every time the members of the community use the ranthak in their village, they actually clean it, not using water or anything, but using sheep wool, which they have plenty of. So the whole concept of reducing, reusing, recycling, this is really a way of life for them. Sustainable agricultural practices. This is Sevang Dolma from this village called Fulak, again towards the east of Ladakh. What she has in her hand, the bunch that you see, this is a wild herb that she sun-dried. It's called umbuk from the radish family. In the pressure cooker, what you see is a one-pot meal called shutagi, which is the bow-shaped pasta. So for a lot of us who think that pasta is only Italian, that's not true. It is also intrinsic to Ladakhi cooking. It's what they eat at the end of the day, especially when they're working the whole day in their farms. The similarity between the Italian and the Ladakhi pasta is that they're both cooked al dente, and the difference is that the Ladakhi pasta is cooked as a one-pot meal, and the Italian pasta, the pasta is boiled separate, and then cooked with the sauce. Everything that you see in this pressure cooker, in this one-pot meal called shutagi, whatever is used in it, whether it's the foraged ingredients or the cultivated ingredients, they actually come from right outside Sevang Dolma's house. And so whatever she forages, whatever she cultivates, contributes to genetic diversity, thereby creating a resilient food system, which I really think is the need of the hour, considering the fact that we are all fighting climate change. And this meal is a testimony to how self-reliant these communities are, and that is something for us to learn. And what I've observed over the years is that they've never used pesticides. They practice what's called as companion planting, which acts as a natural pest control. So what is the story of this indigenous tribe? The meal that you see, the center of the slide, a very traditional Ladakhi meal, different kinds of pastas, oshkyu, shutagi, and the triangle shaped dough. It's actually roasted barley. All of this is actually from literally outside these farmers' homes. You see the wild mustard being separated from the husk. You see the wheat berries being roasted on an open fire. This is what they snack on typically during the day, and how these communities have kept these traditions alive. There's this really fascinating story. Once, this farmer in closer to Ladakh, early morning, I saw her harvesting this whole bunch of vegetables, and she was packing them in a bag with sun-dried apricots. And I asked her who she was gifting that to. And what she told me is that she was taking it to her friends and family to get wheat in return. And it was very fascinating for me to understand that this community still practices barter system. So whatever they do not grow outside their homes and their vegetable patches, they exchange, they grow in return of what they need. Over the time that I have spent with them, I've come to this whole understanding of how they practice ecological sustainability, how interdependent they are, and how they cooperate with each other. And that's something for us to learn in urban. So preserving the ecology is not about one thing. It is really multifaceted. It's about maintaining ecosystem and its biodiversity. It's about preserving our ancient culinary wisdom. It's about sustainable agricultural practices. And all of this is still being practiced by these communities in rural India. I think we all agree that biodiversity loss and climate change are deeply interconnected, because the key driver uh, of climate change is actually the loss of biodiversity. And the communities who understand this the best, who have an in-depth knowledge of our mountain forest, is actually these communities. And that's why these communities are key to fighting climate change, because they are our true culinary custodians and also our true biodiversity conservationists. So what is the way forward? I think we're all aware that commercial development, migration, and modernization pose a massive threat to these communities. What I have noticed personally over the last 5 years is that the younger generation, especially from the east of Ladakh, which is really remote, they've been moving towards Leh in the last 5 years, and even beyond, even the rest of the country. And while there's nothing wrong with that, because they want better economic development, but these indigenous communities, who are the guardians of nature, if they do not stay in the land that belongs to them, if they do not stay in their natural habitat, it's going to lead to a massive erosion of cultural identity and knowledge, which I think is only going to make climate change worse. I personally believe that these communities need a voice from both within and outside, who invest back into the system and prevent them from economic decline. Thank you. These were just some of my thoughts and some of the lessons that I have personally learned over the last 8 years from these indigenous communities, especially across the Himalayan belt.